welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kate Schlarf, and I'm the VP of Growth Marketing here at Moovila. Today, we've got an awesome session with some different MSPs to give you their perspectives on advanced project templates. So with that, I'll introduce the speakers we have today. With me, as always, I've got Louis Bagdonas from the Moovila team. He's our Senior Program Manager of MSPs. He spends countless hours every week onboarding MSPs to our software. So he's seen a lot of different perspectives of project management and just different takes. And he's going to be running the roundtable today. Then we've also got Dan Keltner from Intrust IT. Dan spent the early part of his career, his first 10 years, working in creative design and marketing. Woo. And then in his 30s, he switched over to IT, starting from help desk and moving up the ranks. And most recently, he's been building out his professional services team, as he said, in the Ohio area. We've also got Tyler Elston from SJA Solutions on as well. Tyler is the Director of Professional Services at SJ. As he mentioned, he's based in Michigan. He's been in the industry for over 12 years, and he also moved up from help desk and went through systems engineering, and now he's at the director level, overseeing a team of professional services individuals and handling all of their infrastructure and overhauls, their implementations, things like that. So thank you, Dan and Tyler. We are going to be doing a roundtable format at the end. As we did say, we will have a preview of our new template analytics feature within our Perfect Analytics tool. So we'll do kind of 30 minutes of roundtable. We'll open it up for Q&A. If you guys have questions for the panelists, if you want to stick them in that Q&A section that you see at the bottom, we'll be kind of managing. If they're Moovila questions, I'll answer you on the backside, and then we'll have time for questions, and then we'll go kind of to the top of the hour, the last 10, 15 minutes with that demo. And with that, I'll turn it over to Louis.
Cool. Thanks, Kate. All right, so I think we could probably be here for a long time and talk about templates for a while. But to kick us off, Dan, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about Intrust IT and, whatever you want to share specific, maybe a little bit more on the project side of the house?
Yeah, so Intrust IT is an MSP operating out of Cincinnati, Ohio, is where the headquarters are. We are serving clients across the country. We have some international clients. And a couple years ago, obviously being in an MSP, they've always done projects, but starting about a year ago, we started building a professional services dedicated engineering team focused on just project output and delivery and improving that service offering for our clients. Great company to work for, employee owned. They're an ESOP, and really feel fortunate to be a part of them.
Cool. That's awesome. And then Tyler, for you on the SJ side.
Very traditional MSP. SJA has been in business for about 18 years now. When I remember this to this day, when I was fresh out of college, this was my first, professional job. SJA was 4 employees. Over the last 18 years, we've grown and we're now 40 plus. And so we've been around the block, originally started with like break fix, help desk type stuff, and have migrated into that managed services. We do all of the traditional managed services things, cloud implementations, spam filters, QBRs, all of that stuff. And now we are in the process of maturing our project process.
Okay, cool. So sounds like kind of similar journeys for organizations, right? MSP space and realize, hey, we need to spend a little bit more time and focus on our projects, maybe some dedicated resources. So Tyler, I'll throw this one to you first. When you guys made that switch to focusing on projects and running projects, were the templates already there, or was that kind of like, okay, let's build some templates for this dedicated project team?
Yeah, so I've been at SJA for 4.5 years now. I started here in my career, left, and then came back. So when I came back, there was a guy that sat in my position, and he had already had a lot of templates built out. They were very basic, not a lot of information in them. So actually using templates, I would say at least the last 5 years, we only had 2, and now we have over 11.
Wow. Okay. And then Dan, what about you guys? If that crest point, right, for dedicated engineers happened about a year ago, obviously projects were still happening before that. Were there templates in place, or was that also kind of like, hey, we're gonna really build out our templates at this point and focus on this part of the business?
Yeah, there were a mix of some legacy templates out there. Some of them were being used and not many were still in use. So we spent a lot of time digging through what was out there. And some of them we adapted to our new processes, but most of them we just ended up building from scratch. Um, and then also making sure that the front loading parts of the project, like that internal handoff and the finance portion, those were already there, but we've been updating them to match our processes more effectively.
Okay. So, as you started building those from scratch, Dan, those new ones, right? We're like, hey, we're just gonna scrap it, get out of the way. Let's start with a blank piece of paper. Any tips, any headaches? Would you do it differently? Any feedback on that process?
Well, fortunately, we've got a really great team of engineers, so I've been leaning on them really heavily for the technical portion of what needs done, what order do we need to do it in, how long is it going to take? Uh, and there were a lot of mistakes at first. And so would I do anything differently? I'm sure, but I think that where we've gotten to with our current templates feels really good. And we're always continuing to improve them and find other templates that we need to make.
Yeah, that's great. So really including those engineers in the process, right?
Yeah,
They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones, filling out that, what's that big chunk in the middle? People say 60, 70, 80% is that execution phase, right?
sure.
So involving those doing the work in the process to set those up. So Tyler, for y'all, when you kind of went in and those templates were basic and we've gone now from 2 to 11 standard templates, what sort of pieces of information did you include in those? Like, is it, just start with just phases and tickets, and then once it's a project, we fill out the budgeted hours, or how much information does your group put into those templates?
We put everything that we can in them.
Okay.
The way we have built our templates, we've come up with a naming convention, and we have a template for basically every type of implementation or project that we will do. A lot of them look the same, because we are using the PMI's waterfall framework. So all of the phases that are in that methodology are in every template we have. But if I'm doing a spam filter implementation, for example, that's way different than doing a full high availability infrastructure refresh for a client, right? So the phases are there, the number of tasks and tickets, and obviously the hours are different. And so it's very easy for me to just take that template for the spam filter, apply it, I'm done. One of the bigger tips I have around that is when in doubt, just bake it into the template. It's a lot easier to put it in the template and not need it and just cancel that task or ticket and get those hours back than it is to not have it there and then try to remember all of the stuff that you have to type out and manually add.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, right? I mean, it's making sure that, hey, if this company has this one piece or whatever, then we're going to need to do this piece. So it's better to have it there instead of forgetting about it. So as you put all that information in there, and I'll stay with you, Tyler, on this one, as you're putting all that information in there, how often does your team review those templates and potentially update them?
After every project,
Okay.
From an MSP perspective, I would say we probably have a pretty mature project process. As part of those templates, we have a lessons learned ticket already built out. And so at the end of every project, we're going into a lessons learned meeting. Anybody internal that was part of that, the account managers, system engineers, sysadmins, people from the service team, they're all included in that. So we'll survey them as a service team and say, hey, what did we mess up? Just like they are a client of ours, right? And so we'll survey them, we'll get feedback from them, we'll go through the lessons learned process, any to-dos that come out of that, like, hey, we missed 40 hours on this task that we've never accounted for, that automatically just goes in the template for the next time. And then if we don't need it, we just cancel it.
Yeah. So on those surveys, that's a great point. And I think we've talked about this in earlier webinars about, we've got the surveys on service tickets and what we go for a specific percentage if we get those surveys back on service tickets. How often would you say your customers are responding to those surveys for each project? Sounds like you're sending them on all of them. How often are customers responding?
Yeah, we probably get 25% return on those. But a lot of those projects are quite lengthy, right? So if a project takes 3 months to get 25% of those surveys returned, seems like it's a fairly good return rate. But we survey more than just the clients. We tell the service teams internally, like, you guys are our clients too. And so our engineers know that we really have two clients. We have the client and then the internal service team that has to support the day-to-day help desk type stuff for those clients. And so we survey both. And we get probably about 50% return on those internal surveys as well.
Okay. And Dan, I'm going to come back to you, I promise. But Tyler, when you survey, and that's a great piece about surveying those internal teams, because I'm sure if you've got that lessons learned ticket at the end of your project, you've got a handoff to service. Do you survey that service team at the point of handoff, or do you wait a couple months after the project to say, hey, how good of a job did we do? Did we cover all the bases? Did have any headaches associated? When do you do that internal survey?
Yeah, so typically what we do is if we deployed a new technology for the first time, and it's something that they've never seen, we will actually do an internal meeting where we go over the technical configurations and things like that and train them on that technology. After we train them, then we'll do the survey. One of the questions we ask is, do you feel that you have enough information to be able to support this client day to day with this technology they just received? And so, yeah, we always do it in that order. If it's not new technology and they've seen it before, we will typically skip that portion of it and just send them the survey along with like hey, this project is closed. You're going to see a survey. Let us know, where we screwed up and we'll fix it. Or if we did something that was great and you want us to do it again and it worked out really well, let us know that too, because we'll make sure we keep that in the template.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting those good reviews and feedback is always important, right? It's hard to always just see the bad stuff. So Dan, coming over to you, how often is Intrust in your project team? How often are y'all reviewing your projects and your templates and making updates to those?
Yeah. So our template review process is part of our EOS rocks within our team. So every quarter, an engineer is getting a template or two to go over, review. If they're the person that knows the most about it, they'll get with the person that knows the least about it and make sure that is kind of crosshatched there. And then vice versa, if they're getting assigned one that they don't know much about, their job is to go get with somebody that is familiar with the process and get it looked at. So we're not doing it necessarily after every project. However, if we do come across a task that goes way out of bounds during the delivery process, we'll take a look at it at that point and verify, is this something that client was dragging their feet, or did we not understand something, or did the scope not match the current stance of their infrastructure. So there's a lot of reasons that we might look at an individual task in the middle of a project and then adjust the template from there. And so, yeah, it's more on a quarterly basis for us than after every project, but we are always improving that process for sure.
So when you do those quarterly reviews, and I might get too into the weeds and details here. So, Kate's always there to keep us honest, because I do have a tendency to do this. But when you do those quarterly reviews, where in the projects do your engineers or your PMs or PCs go to look at that? I mean, is it hey, let's just pull a report that shows all these types of projects over the past quarter, or is it, hey, let me just pick a random one and dig into it and look at the time entries and notes? Do you have a formal process around that review?
We didn't have a formal process. Our process was really more looking at the effectiveness of delivery. So did we get everything done in the order that we needed to get it done, and how did that work? And do we need to adjust that process? It's been really difficult for us to go back and find the historical data on how long things took, unless we're going in and doing a lot of double work to track things separately in Excel spreadsheets. And so there hasn't to date been a good process for that. And so, yeah, it's really been more around effectiveness of delivery.
Okay. All right. And then do you look at just all projects of that certain type and kind of just across the board and pick a couple and see how we did?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Cool. So I've gone all around here in the questions, but let's talk about kind of, what percentage of projects have a template applied to them? And Tyler, I'll kick this one back over to you. So of the projects, if you run 100 projects a year, just making up a number there, and you apply a template to your projects, what percentage of those 100 would you use a template on?
100% of them.
100?
For the projects that we have that we don't have a template built for, we still have a template that have our generic phases in them, and then they have the things that are baked in. So like before we do a project, right, we have to build a proposal and we have to deliver the proposal to the client. So those are going to be things that are included in everything. And so we have a template that is generic that has all of that kind of stuff in it. We might have some of the stuff in the middle, like the implementation, like the execution phase type stuff that we don't have, but that's really a small portion of the entire template. So it doesn't take much time to build that if it is custom.
Sure. So on those implementation pieces, right? So we've got our base template, which is great to hear. You're at 100% there. And if that implementation piece, how many projects would you say use multiple templates in that implementation piece? And what I mean by that is, sales goes out and they sell an Office 365 migration and a firewall implementation. Is that common for your group where you'll have multiple templates lumped into that implementation phase?
For us, it's super rare to do that. We find that when we lump different projects together, that we lose things. And so we used to, but it's been very hard to get everybody on the same page. And one of the examples I have is using Office 365 migrations. It's very common to do an Office 365 migration and then add some kind of like cloud to cloud backup or something like that to it because you're already there. We split them out because we may have different people do each phase. And so rather than having a bunch of resources on a single project, we split them up. We can track resources better. We can track profitability for those different project types better. And then it also allows us to kind of fine tune those templates too, because we're not always going to have an Office 365 project with a cloud to cloud backup. We may just do cloud to cloud backup, and we need to know how to price that right for the future.
Okay, great. Yeah, so keeping those things separate, but it sounds like it's, that's a lot of work between the operations side of the team and the sales side of the house, right? And helping them explain and understand why we do that. So Dan, I'll send this question over your way, and Tyler, I'll give you a chance to answer as well too. But in that same sort of topic of sales and operations and templates and keeping things separate, part of your review process and when you're updating templates, does your group involve the sales side of the house in that process at all, or do you communicate that out to them, or how do we keep everybody happy in those two departments?
Yeah, we're starting to develop a lot more processes around that actually currently. We have a dedicated architect who works with our client success and our sales team. that's responsible for building those scopes. So when we get a project closing out that's outside of a certain range, or didn't go right, or the client had misunderstood expectations, we'll be doing a lot of postmortems around that and working with them to adjust how they're scoping. How they're scoping those projects to match what the process is that we need to change to effectively deliver that. Um, for a long time, it was definitely disconnect between service and sales, and I think that happens in a lot of MSPs. And so, being able to show historical, that um, the historical data around how long things and templates were taking now through Moovila is really helpful in going to the architect to say, okay, well, on this project type that we're doing a lot of now, we can see that we're definitely coming in way over on our budget on this part of it, and so we need some more time there to be able to complete it. But this other part we might need less. And so getting a good relationship going with that architect and making sure that they have the information they need to go work with sales and our client success team is really going to be a part of that success.
Yeah. Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, and it's not, we've all worked in different industries, projects in different industries, and whether we're doing it for our customers or not, that sales and operations bridge, if you want to call it, it's always a tough one, right? And to involve them, I think the way y'all are doing is important, and I think just helps overall everybody's success. And then, so Tyler, what about you? How do y'all involve? It sounds like you've got a good bridge already between operations services on projects and then the handoff over to the managed service side. What about how about the front end of that funnel there? How are you involving your sales group?
Yeah, so we do a lot of different things, but I think the biggest thing we do is we have a standing meeting every week. It's on Monday mornings where me with my project management hat, I meet with the sales team and the account managers, and we go over like where our project's at, what are we stuck on, what do you guys need scoped for future roadmap items, and things like that. But the other component to that standing meeting is hey, this project is stuck. We can't get an answer from the POC. Like, we need to schedule this to keep it on budget. Account manager, I need you to step in. You have the relationship with them. Like, let's get some movement here. And then the last part of that is any tweaks to templates, any budgeted hours. Like, this is how you price things. And so, yeah, we do it once a week for an hour every week. It's just training how to deliver the proposals, feedback on the sales side.
That's great. Yeah, and that helps bring out at the end of the project when you're reviewing it as you go, which is amazing. But if you get to the end and there's no surprises, right? You're having that conversation every week. We're all on the same page. It's not like at the end we're pointing fingers at the sales team. Hey, you underscoped this, and they're saying, well, you didn't tell us it changed since the last project. So making sure we keep the finger pointing out of it. So let's talk a little bit. We've thrown out Office 365 migrations and implementations and whatnot. And, it sounds like we're working as we then bring in new services that we are deploying and offering for our customers. We're templatizing those. Dan, I'll start with you. What specific types of projects would you say are kind of where you focus your templates on, or what types of projects are you doing most frequently from your templates?
Well, like Tyler, all of our projects are at least have some portion of a template in there, whether it just be the bookends of the project or a part of the actual deployment and delivery. Right now, it's been really, really heavy. We're selling a lot of Intune deployments to help protect against phishing attacks for our clients. And so I spent the last couple of days just hammering Moovila's service, getting new projects in there and putting the Intune template in and getting it built out so that we can get those planned. We have so many of them that's the big project that we're spending a lot of time catching up on. And so developing a plan and a timeline to try and get all of these busted out is really important. And especially for that client success service relationship where they can go to their clients and say, look, we got a lot. We know it's longer than usual to get these projects going, but here is what the timeline looks like currently. We feel we feel 80% confident that that's going to be our kickoff date. And so Intune has been really, really big lately. Office 365 are pretty much, we feel really good about that template. And then we have a lot of templates that are portions of effort that don't necessarily or aren't usually sold as a project by itself, but it goes into different types of projects. A lot of Azure type things where we're pairing that with maybe a file server migration or an Active Directory on-prem to Entra AD migration. And so we have a lot of those Azure ones built out specifically to help bridge that gap in building a project plan where it might not be something that has ever existed before, as far as just a self-contained project, but now with being able to pull portions of efforts, and kind of like Tyler was saying, we haven't typically done a lot of those Frankenstein projects where there's parts of different things here and there. We're starting to get a lot more of those coming through from the sales team. And so being able to pull different parts of projects together where it may be file server migration and Intune and workstation deployment kind of all pulled together, being able to use templates to build a few different effort timelines is definitely helpful for keeping that organized and coordinated.
That's awesome. I think, and we can quote you on it, but I think we'll probably use Frankenstein projects in the future, but we'll give you credit. So Tyler, what about y'all? What are some, maybe, you've mentioned you've got your 11 standard, your as you deploy new applications, you're templatizing those. So I'm going to frame the question a little differently for you. Based on what you are seeing in the industry and with your clients, and we all hear day in and day out, cybersecurity AI, cybersecurity AI, cybersecurity AI. Dan mentioned a lot of Intune to help customers from phishing attacks. Do you think, or do you have any suggestions or thoughts around what might be some projects that are going to start popping up more for MSPs, or maybe some types of projects that your organization or MSP should be focusing on?
Definitely security. That's one of the things we've templatized the most is probably our security offerings. We have taken all of the offerings that we have, and we used to have 5 different flavors of spam filter, 2 different versions of MFA, and we just kind of picked one. We've standardized on a single tool for each of those categories, and so what that allows us to do is our templates they're ran as projects. We call them implementations. They're the same thing every single time. Somebody just needs to follow the checklist that's in that template. And so we're seeing a lot of compliance requirements, right? With CMMC coming out and changing, there's lots of MFA requirements. We're seeing a lot of MDR, SOC, SIEM type solutions that clients are needing to be able to meet those requirements. We're seeing a lot of clients take cybersecurity more seriously, and they're starting to get their insurance policies and things like that. And so they've got to be able to say yes on a bunch of checkboxes. And so if they can't, that's fodder for project work. Right now, I would say that's probably most of what we're seeing. We did see a lot of server projects last year with the end of Server 2012 R2 being with support ending in October. So we got through most of those infrastructure projects last year. So now it's more of a focus on security across the board.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, I know it's, the security piece is huge. So what if, you said you've standardized your offerings, hey, we're just one MFA or whatever. What do y'all do in the instance where a customer comes in and they're like, no, we want this separate offering? When you've got your standard, do you guys take that on, or do you push them towards yours, or do you just then say, okay, well, this is a separate project, we're going to quote it completely separate and run it that way?
Typically, if they come with their own, we will allow it, but it's always best effort support.
Yeah.
It's not what our techs are trained in. It's not what we have certifications in. It's not our product offering. So what we'll do is we'll say, yep, we'll bring you on with that. However, in the next 90 days, you need to agree to swap to our product offering, get it on the roadmap. There have been situations where clients are like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And we will say, okay, let's find you somebody you can work with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's great. I know it's hard to stick to those, but I think it ultimately leads to better success for everybody, right? So I know we've been going for a while here, and we'll turn it over to questions to the audience. But before we do, Dan, any last? Well, they don't have to be last. If you think of them, you can bring them up. But any final tips or pieces of advice around templates?
Yeah, there is going to be a balance that you need to find for your team and your engineers and client success and sales and for your clients. And that balance is going to include a lot of things that play into the project. So the template, the amount of time per task and the amount of needed information in there for the techs or engineers who are doing the projects, and the amount of information that needs to be in there for your clients to understand how the project is actually progressing. And so spending time asking for that feedback from your clients and spending time asking for that feedback from your team is going to directly lead to how successful your templates are.
That's great. Yeah, it's that feedback loop, right? It's getting
Mhm.
everybody involved, getting everybody involved in it, right? In the template and the process so that they feel a part of it. Tyler, what about you?
So I thought about this, and the one thing that sticks in my head is, as IT companies, we want everything to be perfect, which makes getting started seem really daunting. Um, but this is a process, so it's a living, breathing thing, right? It's never going to be perfect. It will always require maintenance, and tweaking and lessons learned and things like that. So don't shy away from it. Just get started somewhere. And just make a point to improve on that as you go along. The first project you do might not be perfect. That template might not be perfect, but all of the stuff you learn out of using that template will make the next iteration better.
Great. Spot on. Absolutely. Yeah. Got to start somewhere, right? So we've got some questions coming in here. So we can start going on some questions. This one here, do you favor creating detailed templates with very specific tasks and steps, which may change more often depending on the client, or templates that are more generalized to serve a catch-all, if you would, within a project type? Dan, I'll give this first one over to you.
Yeah, we obviously, sitting in the seat that I'm in, I prefer really detailed templates with the tasks laid out. And the team that we've been building is on board with that. We spent a lot of time talking about the why of why that's important and how this is going to help us be successful. There are small, what we would have done as a fixed fee ticket a year and a half ago, but now it just technically lives on the project board for tracking, that may have a smaller bucket where it's more considered a best effort on the amount of time it's going to take, and doesn't have it may be two access points that need thrown out. And while I would love to scope that a lot, flesh out that template more like our other templates, that team doesn't work in our processes all the time. And so being able to find, like I was alluding to earlier, the balance with that team, make sure they have the information they need, make sure the client has the information they need, so that we can make sure it's getting done and getting done right, but it's not going to need as flushed out of a process as a server implementation or a migration type project.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And Tyler, anything to add to that?
Yeah, for us, we're the same way. We make our templates very specific. The engineers have done a really good job of spending time doing R&D. And so if we're deploying a cloud technology and we find a way to mitigate or completely prevent an issue from happening, that just becomes part of our checklist. And we don't allow clients to say, don't check that box. The goal is to minimize issues. And so we have what we call tech standards, and it's very specific. Like all of the spam filters are configured exactly the same way, with the same rules, the same policies being applied to the same types of things. And so what we find is, one, our templates are super specific and it's very easy to plan them. But two, from a service side, it makes support for those clients much easier because they know how everything is configured for every single client without even having to log in and look at it. So the time to resolution from a service perspective is also much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, I would say, probably one of the number one questions we get asked as well too, when folks come in and they're looking to, want to implement the tool, but also work on their project processes, is what's the right number of tickets, right? And and we always talk about the burden of administration, what's the right balance. And I think it does depend on the organization. We definitely always lean towards the more detailed side for sure, right? Because then that's going to give you the ability to drill down and review and look at that. So we do have a follow-up question here on that. So I'll give this one to Tyler. So Tyler, if you had a pick of your 11 templates, your favorite template, I know that we love them all, but one's our favorite. What does it look and feel like? And you don't have to tell me what type it is so that the others don't feel, hurt by you picking. But what's it look like as kind of number of phases, number of tickets in a typical project for you?
My favorite is probably our full-blown project template. Mostly because I spent a lot of time in Q4 of last year revamping the entire project process. We redid literally everything from the ground up. We did the whole process. We rebuilt templates. We built documentation on how to do everything inside of each ticket, and what the deliverables are, who's responsible for them, and things like that. And so this particular template has 5 phases, and each phase has at least 3 tasks and tickets in them. We include everything from project scoping to proposal delivery in those. And then on the back end, as Dan called them, the bookends, we have our final invoicing, we have a QA process, we have contract reviews, client surveys, things like that keep all of these loose ends tied up in a nice little bow. And so it's built in such a way that anybody, if I was sick, anybody can look at this process. They have the documentation they need. And while we don't have 2 project managers, somebody can pick this up and run with it if I'm out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a huge point, right? Is can other people understand it, right? Is it handleable? Is it scalable, right? As you said, SJ's gone from 4 to 40, right? And is continuing to grow. As you continue to grow, more project managers, you need to make sure that you can bring people into the fold and get them up to speed and running quickly. So Dan, what about you? What's the balance look like for you? Number of phases, number of tickets, typically.
Yeah. So our process is we want as many tickets as we can get in there that the engineers will actually work and go through the process. If we're putting a ticket in there for every 15 minutes of effort or every 30 minutes of effort, it's just going to become too much for the engineers to stop what they're doing and go back. And so that's another part of that balance for that project setup. But for our favorite project, or the one that we're the most confident in, we have 6 phases, including the bookends and the finance handoffs, or the finance portion of it, with 4 to 6 tickets per phase.
Okay, that's awesome. So a good balance, right? Gives a good framework, good idea, where to get started. And we've got another question in here. So I think this one alludes kind of to your tips and advice at the end there, Tyler, is just you got to start with it. Do you have any sort of recommendation on what would be a a standard type of project that all MSPs are usually doing that they could start on for templates if they had no templates today, right?
So I wouldn't pick a specific project type. What I would do is I would pick what project management framework you want to use. And so, because they have different phases, and different things that go in those phases. And so if you have the framework, you basically have the roots of that template laid out. So for us, we use the PMI framework, and so we automatically know that we have an initiation phase, and then it's like, all right, well, what goes into the initiation? Maybe some scoping, maybe some proposal creation, proposal delivery. What's next? Solution design, invoicing, things like that, and then we can move in. So I would say, pick your framework. That gives you your basis, and then from there, you can basically build whatever template you want around it. It's just execution-specific items that you want to bake into that.
That's great. Dan, what about you? And you can't have the same answer as Tyler.
Well, okay. I'm gonna do kind of two halvesies here. I would, if you're doing your very first thing, look at your communications and make sure that you have your communications templated out so that you know how often you're going to be communicating with your client. Think about what information they want to feel confident in and comfortable with, that you're making it through the project effectively, and then build that out. And you can use that as a framework for starting to get to that project management template. As far as technology deliveries, I would say start with a firewall. Firewalls always need refreshed. As long as you have everything documented, your network engineers should feel fairly confident with the rules that need to go into it, and then figure out what the process looks like. So receiving and getting it opened and powered on, make sure it's not DOA, and then configuration, deployment, and cleanup, and just figure out what your phases are, and then just start with something that you already do regularly. And it may be a firewall, it may be an email migration or a server refresh, something like that, but something you've already been doing. I would probably steer clear from a new technology until you feel comfortable in your process.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Kate, it looks like, did we get them all the questions?
You did. I think we're ready to switch over to demo. If anyone still has questions, you can drop them in the chat, or in the Q&A, and we'll keep answering while Lewis is demoing as well.
Yeah, and before I go to demo, let me get my screen up here. Like Zoom. There it is. So we've got our information up here. We've got our emails for Dan, myself, and Tyler on here. You can find us on LinkedIn as well too. Really big thank you, Dan, to you and Tyler, taking time out of your day to join us. We know everybody's busy. There's a lot of projects going on out there, and they all run perfectly smooth and nothing ever goes wrong, and customers always get us the information back on time. But we do really appreciate you taking the time and the insight to share about yourselves and your organizations and your processes. And we know it's helpful for us, right? We're always continuing to learn, and I know everybody here, I'm sure, enjoyed everything as well too.
Thanks for having us.
So jumping into the platform, right? We've talked a little bit more about overall, thought leadership and processes, and Dan and Tyler both said the word process a lot, which I think is important and is great in the project world. And also, you can't automate something you don't have a process for, right? So being able to understand how you're going to build that project out and how you're going to leverage the automation of a tool like Moovila is important. So again, we're going to do a short demo today. If you want a full demo, we'll pull up a QR code at the end that you can jump into. And we're going to focus just on templates here in Moovila. And we take the mindset that a template should be as close to a project as possible. And the ability to build a template should be exactly like a project. There's no reason that you should limit the information that you can have in a template that you would have in a project. So what I have up here is similar to what Tyler was alluding to with his base project management, right? We've just got our base template here, and we have a discovery phase and a planning phase, and then we've got an execution phase, and then we've got closing, right? So those bookends, as Dan would say, that we do on every project, they're not going to change. And then it's that execution piece in the middle that's going to change project to project, where the bulk of those implementations or installs are going to happen. And within this template here, you can see we've filled out as much information as we possibly can, right? And when we, in Moovila, when we fill out that information, that's going to allow us to leverage the technology and the automation that we have built into the platform. So of course, our phase structure, our ticket names are important. We can set our priorities on our tickets in our templates. Duration, it's going to help us forecast and use the critical path engine to automatically schedule the overall timeline of the project. The work estimate or the budgeted hours, whether or not something is a milestone, key to have those milestones identified in our templates so that way they're easily translate into our projects. Our resource types required in Moovila. Why that's extremely important is 2 reasons. It's going to help us with our resource wizard when we're assigning tasks to owners. So we're going to find you the best option to take work on based on their resource type, potentially their skills, and then also their capacity at that time. But defining that resource type in the template also allows you to then help forecast out your resource capacity requirements as well. So we've got skills here, right? We can layer in, hey, on a base project, hopefully we don't have too many skills defined. Maybe if we need an advanced PM for a certain piece of this, maybe the service brief or the project final review with customers, we might define some skills. Typically, we would say no owners in templates. Now, if you might be a little bit of a smaller organization, you've got one piece of work that only one individual can do, we could define that out in the template, but typically we want to look at that once we get those projects going. But then also taking a step further, we've got our Moovila cost codes and billing codes. So if we want to identify certain points in that project, like final billing that we want to report out on across the portfolio, we can set those cost codes and those billing codes in our templates here. Within that template, what's also important is that we build our dependencies, right? So we can build out our dependency structure in our templates so that when we spin up a new project, all we have to do is set the start date, grab that implementation phase, tie everything together, and within minutes, we can use the critical path engine to automatically forecast start and due dates for every single ticket or piece of work in that project. We also can leverage the Moovila RPAC score here to let us know, hey, how good of a structure am I building in this template, right? So as we have one place to start, we can use that RPAC score and the debugger to automatically help coach us through, do I need to build dependencies? Do I need to set durations? Do I need to, set my work estimates? So knowing that when we create a new project from this template, we've got a good starting point. And then what we wanted to show you today, and I'm going to switch templates real quick, and I'm going to go to a new customer onboarding template here, right? Same sort of information. We've got our durations, our work estimates, our dependencies. So template analytics. And we heard a lot about this at IT Nation in the fall. We heard a lot of people come up to us and say, hey, we want to do that review quarterly, monthly that we were talking about with Dan and Tyler. But we've got to dig through tickets and we've got to look through notes and we've got to, go through emails and see how we did. And it's just a pain, right? We don't do it. So we went and developed the technology to automatically track and pull that data back into your templates to see how we performed. So if we just change our workspace view in here in Moovila, we're just going to look at, let's look at everything. So what we've got set in here is our work estimate, and we've pulled in some template analytic columns. And essentially what we're looking at is how did we perform on a ticket by ticket basis, project ticket by project ticket basis, on our budgeted hours or our work estimate, on our duration for each of those tasks, and then also on our budget. So as we pull these columns in here, we can see exactly, hey, to assess the network for a new customer, we thought that'd take about 2 hours, right? It's actually taking us about 4.3 hours, right? So we're over by about 2.3 hours. We're going to look at the same thing there on duration to help you better inform your timelines and expectations for your customers. But then also, we're going to look at the budget for each of those tasks as well. So if we thought a solutions architect, who might be a little bit more of a cost-effective resource, could handle this piece of work, but we're using a project engineer and we're actually spending more money on this ticket, we'll be able to see that here. Now, you also can drill in to any of these tickets to see exactly what's going on. So at the top level here, Moovila is going to look at, hey, this is our template task. We're going to assess the network. We need a solutions architect. We're going to estimate it's going to take about 2 hours of work. We're going to say that, we've got a unit cost of about $51, so our budget is $100. And I'm going to collapse this real quick, the analytics portion there, and I need to update Chrome for me. But what we can see at the bottom is all of the project tasks that have been spawned from this template task. And we'll show you the status of all of these. We'll show you the resource type if we're changing that resource type on a project by project basis. We'll show you the actual work, right? And what we're averaging there is we're looking at tickets that are in a completed status. Now, we will show you work that's in progress, right? But we're not going to take that into account on the average. But as you complete those, we're then going to roll that into the average there. We'll look at the duration, the unit cost, and the budget. You also have the ability directly from within this screen, so reviewing our template, to drill into that time log and see, hopefully Brad has some notes here on why this took 8 hours. Now, if I expand out the analytics portion at the top, so Carmen in Moovila, which is the AI project analyst and coach that's going to help walk you through building out great project plans, she also is going to review the data in here for you and give you all of those findings, right? Your task unit cost is exceeding our template value. Our time logged is exceeding our template value. We'll show you clearly, what percentage we're going to be over here. And then we're going to show you, hey, we would recommend that on this template, you go ahead and update the resource type required to an engineer, no longer a solutions architect. And you need to give yourself more budgeted hours. We need to update that to 4 hours. And we can click this button and update our template and have a new baseline moving forward to be able to then know how long do onboardings take us or how long do firewall implementations take us. So we also, as well too, from within here, you can open these tasks. You can see all the details. You can look at the notes. You can look at, who's the owner, cost codes, billing codes. So really consolidating all this information for you in the template so that you're not having to go and search and pick through each of these projects to see how you did. We're going to automatically roll all that information back here for you and then give you the tools right here. So maybe in your weekly reviews, as Tyler said, with the sales team, we can pull this up and say, hey guys, here's how we're performing against our budget. We're starting to be a little bit over. We don't feel like we need to update our work estimate yet, but if we start to see this trend continue, we'll go ahead and update that and let you know.
Thank you, Lewis. As a reminder for anyone who joined late, we are going to be sending this out within the next 48 business hours. We'll have the recording as well as our next session. We do these once a month. So we'll have the team together. And if you want to pull up the other slide, Lewis, just so they have that, I've dropped how to book a demo. There's QR code to book. If you want, Lewis only covered the template area today, so there's a lot more in Moovila that you can see. We've got a link in the chat on how to book an MSP specific demo. And with that, I'll give it, I know Dan and Tyler are still on. If you guys have any last minute thoughts, I know you kind of gave them before, but anything else you'd like to let your fans know? You've had a lot of people stay on till the top of the hour.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want to thank Lewis for helping go through the onboarding process with me and bring me into the tool set. It's been a huge learning process. And Tyler is one of my NLG peer groups, so I wanted to thank Tyler too for agreeing to meet with me about once a month just to talk about projects in the MSP world.
We love to hear that. Tyler, anything from you, or are you good?
Yeah, just thank you everybody for joining. I know you guys get a lot of invites for webinars and things like that. So the one thing I will say is project maturity as an MSP is a huge strategic advantage. We get laser focused on generating MRR and having managed service agreements where we're just billing. But if you can build out your project practice with processes and templates and they're efficient, you can generate a lot of one-time billables that will increase your revenue. Just to put that into perspective, I've been focusing on this for about 2 years now, and our project implementations are about 10% of our company revenue before they were almost non-existent. So I would say take it seriously and at least start because if you're not doing it, you're probably missing out.
Yeah, couldn't have said that better myself, Tyler.
Awesome.
I mean, that's awesome to hear, and I'm sure that's 10% also on top of a lot of growth as well too. So that's incredible.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at next month's session. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.